Welcome to Revlog, where Pastor Bryan reminds
Did you
us
just drop?
to err is human.
Yes, it is. You're just talking, and all of a sudden that we went live, and you went, welcome to...
From beautiful downtown Burbank.
You don't have to convince me. You've always got that commanding voice as it is, Pastor.
Yeah, okay.
Again.
Okay. All right.
I'm just Chris Johnson from Carrizo Springs.
Welcome to
I
Revlog,
love it. I love it. It's my favorite part.
where Pastor Aaron has
He is.
all kinds of things to say today.
Yes. The knives are out.
No.
Apparently.
Okay. I'd like to devote myself to prayer.
Prayer. So we're in Acts chapter 2 today.
Funny you should mention
Yeah.
that.
It does mention prayer,
It does.
though briefly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're
Now
having
we're just going through finding any.
Words that say
anywhere
prayer.
we find the word pray. That's what we're going to talk
It
about.
qualifies in our series.
Now, I suspect it's a pretty significant element here.
I think so too.
Aaron, help us get started.
Yeah.
So Acts 2:42
Yeah.
and following.
So this passage, Acts 2 and Isaiah 6, are the prototypical models for constructing worship services. So you go to worship training school.
Worship 101.
Worship 101. These are the passages you're going to find, because you have here this when they got together, what did they do? Because we don't have any bulletins lying around from those first gatherings. They put everything up on the wall, so they didn't have those no. But what we do have is this telling here of when they gathered, these are the things that they did.
Right.
They broke bread. They had a time of fellowship. They devoted themselves to teaching and prayer.
Prayer, yeah.
And what's incredible nowadays when you look at worship services, how much does prayer play a part of the gathered body? And when we're going to be talking about prayer for several weeks, but whether it's corporate, whether it is some intercessory or petitional prayer, that do we stop and pray? And I have to remind myself, not just to put prayer in there, that it has a function.
Yeah.
As if it's an invocation kind of prayer, to remind myself, I'm not inviting the Spirit. The Spirit's here. I mean, we need to give gratitude for the fact that the Spirit is among us, and may we enter into what the Spirit's already doing. There's so many things to think about, but this is a good reminder as they gathered and at the model that they had for worship, that prayer was a really big part of it.
Yeah.
And eating. And they mentioned eating twice.
Yeah, I've tried to rephrase my prayer, something along the lines, to your point, that God would open our eyes to the movement of His Spirit. Right. So you do hear sometimes people say we invite the Spirit in. To your point, God's with us.
Yeah.
Right? The Spirit is near. I think often the problem is our blindness, our deafness, right? So how do we, pray so that God might open our senses to the movement of the Spirit?
Says in the problem of pain or a grief observed, one of those two.
Chris don't care.
Yeah, that's what he said. Chris doesn't care. But for the rest of you, this is what C.S. Lewis would say. When he lost his wife, that God wasn't speaking, and he was screaming at him, and he wasn't speaking. And then, he just was journaling. He was processing the loss of his wife. And then 6 months later, he went back and read that, and he realized that God was saying to him, I was speaking all along. You just were screaming so much. You just didn't have the ears to hear it at that time. And it's a touching, tender moment in the process of his grief.
So that's don't pray.
No,
Is that what you're?
That's saying? It's just saying.
Okay.
There's a time for yelling. There's a time for screaming,
Right.
but there's also a time just to listen and just receive.
I also want to give you an opportunity to put a footnote in here. There's no music mentioned here.
Okay. I think if you continue, it says praising God at 47.
Does it add that? Praising God.
Thank you.
And having favor with all people.
Okay, so and then there's the fellowship
So if you
component.
squint-
There's the
Right there. It's amazing what praising can do.
Thank you. But I don't have any stress with that because I believe that in the fellowship and in the praising of God,
there's plenty of time for song.
There's plenty of music.
Good.
So,
Brian, what were your thoughts on this
No
text?
musical instrument.
Luther said that you sing, you pray twice. So,
Well, I see in this a passage that I've always seen as an idyllic time, and it there just seems whenever I've read this passage, it seems to me that a golden haze fills the page.
There's a bright golden haze
on the meadow. Yes, yes. The corn is as high as an elephant's eye.
That's right.
Anyway, our apologies to Rogers and Hammerstein, but this passage, I'm not so sure that it was the idyllic thing, and maybe I'm just being iconoclastic here, but it was probably not an idyllic time in the way that we think of just a happy, peaceful time in the Shire. It seems to me that if there's a lot of prayer, then that means that there is a lot that needs prayer. And if there's a lot that needs prayer, then things sometimes are very distressing and sometimes are very puzzling or confusing, and you need people around you and people gather together to help each other pray. And I think if you read on, you see that it's not the paradise that this seems to be, because they're persecuted, they're infighting, and there's a whole lot of things going on. But so the more the trouble, the more the prayer.
I don't want to take issue with my colleague from New Braunfels, but I would say it depends on how you define idyllic, I guess, because I do not dispute where there is great persecution, the prayer must equal it.
Right.
But I think it is, God is adding to their number daily. They are enjoying being together.
That's not to say that there's not joy.
And that this time is a refuge that beyond what's going on out there, that right here, and they're all in. I think that's the other thing about this that makes it come alive, is that they're all committed. Because they know that there's no halfway to it. If your name's going to be associated with this movement, it's you're either in or you're out, and the Romans are going, whoever's.
With all due respect to my colleague from Bowling Green, Missouri.
That's right.
I would say, let me just add that lest I paint too much of a picture of misery there. And I once saw a cartoon that had a church staff gathered around, and they said, "That's it then, it's agreed. Our mission statement is misery loves company." And I've felt like that in churches before. But there is joy here. There is joy, but that's just the point. It is counterintuitive, because the difficulty that they face should produce misery, but it doesn't. Why?
Yeah.
Because they are gathered, because they are comforting one another, because there are no needy persons among them, because they're paying attention to each other's needs.
Yeah.
And so amidst all of that, there is, I think, there is joy. Yeah. And so
That's good.
He concedes the point. I get it.
I concede the point.
You both are correct. Well done.
Wow.
Well done.
And here's your trophy.
Oh, my word. Wow.
Aaron, what question do you have of the text?
Well, Bryan, to further pat Bryan on the
further
back.
antagonize.
No. Just one of the greatest challenges in my life was during my doctoral studies. I was young family, child, and I was in amongst the people that didn't believe, and were antagonistic toward the gospel.
Longhorns. Excuse me.
I think we need to start this whole thing again.
There are some faithful believers in Austin.
Some.
A remnant.
But it challenged me, because are you going to be who you are? Because anytime you move somewhere, you can be whomever you want to be.
That's right. In particular, at a university where that seems to be encouraged all the more.
And when I've had those opportunities, God has reminded me, this is who I've called you to be. So are you going to be that guy?
Good. Yeah.
And the most fruitful and challenging time of my spiritual life was when I felt that pressure all the time. So my question, I guess, is in the times where I feel the abundance, am I as quick to be as fervent in prayer?
Yeah. Amen. That's great. Good job.
And I must say I do love it when Aaron gives me a consolation prize. I'm and patronizes me.
I have spiritual gifts that you've never even heard of.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
one of them.
I think patronization may be one of those.
Bryan, what is your question of this text?
Why am I here right now? No, that's not of the text. That's only a question for Aaron. And my question is, will we get to see this again? And will we know when we're seeing it?
Praise
On
God.
this side of eternity?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question.
You look at the churches that the greatest movement of the Spirit. It's the African church. It's in the Chinese church where they feel that pressure and numbers are being added daily, and you got to wonder, they're feeling that.
Yeah.
It's the formula that you set forth. So once again, I think Bryan's been right the whole time.
Oh my word!
We would love to hear your thoughts on this passage and where Bryan needs to be as well, if you would comment below.